So I am going to talk a little bit about the history of this thing called ARTCRANK, what it is, how it started, how it's changed over the last 10 years. 2017 is actually our 10th anniversary. So it is an auspicious time to be discussing these things. And hopefully in a way that's relevant to you and your job and your life, whether or not you care about bikes or art. Although I assume that if you're willing to come out at 8 in the morning to listen to somebody talk about bikes and art, you must care about at least one of those things. So if you're keeping track of how this worked, we started with a business that was an event, and 8 years later, we launched an e-commerce site. I'm pretty sure that's the model they're teaching in business school right now in terms of how you start a company and build a brand. Never, ever, ever sell anything online. But just even the process of how we got there is kind of a little bit of an interesting adventure. The thing that maybe ties this all together, whether or not you care about bikes and art, is that this is in truth the best and most fulfilling and exciting thing that I've ever done, but it's also the hardest thing that I've ever done. And at times, it's felt like I'm getting away with something. It's definitely felt like an opportunity to get away from things that I didn't want to be doing with my life and my career. And in all honesty, it's also at times felt like something that I couldn't get away from fast enough. And I think there's this idea when you start your own business or when you start a project that you're supposed to love every minute of the experience and it's the most magical thing in the world. And when you do it and experience the actuality of it, it turns out it's a lot more complicated than that. And the great thing about bicycles for me is that other than walking, they're probably the most accessible form of mechanized transportation there is. They're the easiest and most affordable way to get around. And the great thing about posters is they're kind of that for art. If you go to an art opening, you might see a piece that really speaks to you or inspires you. And if you happen to have $50,000, maybe you can take it home and have it in your house. And I wanted to do an art show for somebody who had just enough to buy a six-pack and then maybe have a little bit left over. So they could go and see not only something that they cared about reflected in a creative way by all these talented people in their community, but also actually take one of those things home. So that was the idea I started with, and got a whole bunch of people together that I knew from the creative community to do posters for this show. And when we did our first show about 2 blocks from here, One on One Bike over on Washington Avenue, I wasn't even there at the moment the doors were opened, because I figured, really, who shows up early to an art show? You know, people will come maybe at 9 o'clock, maybe there'll be 50 people here, it'll be a small crowd, we'll all wander around the room with our hands in our pockets and figure out something to talk about. But when I finally got to the front door at 7:15, about 15 minutes after the show had opened, the first thing that surprised me was that I couldn't get in because there was already a line out the door halfway down the block. It's kind of embarrassing not to be able to get into your own art show, by the way, for reference. It's sort of like showing up late for your own wedding. It's not really done. What did I learn from this unexpected success? Honestly, it's something that I should have known from the years that I spent in advertising and design, which is that if you want to do something that's truly unique and truly successful, you don't follow what somebody else has done as an example. You don't try to imitate. You move to the open space. You do what's not being done. For me personally, that meant doing different types of work than I was in my professional setting. For ARTCRANK as a show, it meant in a world where buying something was all of a sudden as easy as pushing a button on your computer in the middle of the night, there was actually an appeal to an experience that required people to show up physically in a place at a certain time and be able to buy something not infinitely, but in very small editions, 30 posters in an edition. If you don't get one of those, well, sorry, better luck next time. And I didn't know that or really grasp it at the time, but it's something that has repeated itself, not just in the shows that we've done in Minneapolis over the years, but everywhere else that we've been able to bring the experience. That idea of taking a step outside of what's expected and what we've created for ourselves as a consumer culture and as a design culture is really appealing to people. And seeing how that plays out has been a lot of fun. I have never learned a single thing from doing something right the first time. Luckily, I have also never done anything right the first time. So, and this is important to me, especially now, because I think we live in a culture where it's very difficult to fail quietly. It's very difficult to make mistakes. and have those sort of processed as part of your learning. Everything is very public. Everything is very instantaneous. And even something that you do unintentionally can blow up as the worst thing in the world for at least the next 15 minutes, if not the next few days. And to me, sometimes that crosses the bounds between accountability and just basically discouraging creative thinking and discouraging experimentation. I want this to be a creative culture where people feel like they can make mistakes and learn from them. I don't think, people who go out of their way to do stupid shit, well, they get what they deserve. But if you don't live and work in a culture that allows you to take chances and to make mistakes, you will never have great ideas. And I've been lucky enough in my career to work in places and with people who encourage that, who encourage me to push those boundaries, to take those chances, knowing that it wasn't always going to be brilliant, it wasn't always going to be right, it wasn't always going to make sense. But just having the opportunity to do that and know that even if I failed spectacularly, that I would learn from that and be able to improve it, that things would get better. And I hope that that culture and that belief is still present in our business. I believe it is. I believe it always will be. But it's something that I think in terms of when you think about your own career and your own life, if you don't feel like you're being given that latitude, it's time for a re-examination, and it's time to think a little bit about how you can get to a place where you're able to take those chances and make those mistakes. So what I want to leave you with is that we get really wound up in this idea of making a big decision or doing something or making a choice that's going to change our lives. And the thing is, the choices that really change your life aren't the big ones. They're not the audacious, scary stuff. They're the little things that you do. They're job interviews. They're the people that you work with. And the important stuff in your life, whatever it was, has probably already happened because you're here today and you have the opportunity to live a life in a way that's more like what you want. And if you wait for the right time to do something, that right time will never arrive. So whatever it is that you want to do, whatever dream you want to chase, whatever stupid ass idea, except for bike poster shows, that you want to be part of, do it. Because if you wait for the right time, you're going to do nothing but wait. Thank you very much.